People of the world, welcome to Send It Rising Live. This is the 349th episode, if you can even believe it. Our guest today is an absolute force of nature. He's currently doing this really cool thing where he will help folks like me set up the most ridiculous, high-end, beautiful lighting slash microphone setup. When he's looking at the camera, it's like a tablet and a mirror that produces the effect that he's actually looking at you. So most Zoom calls, people aren't actually looking at you if they're even looking at the camera at all. He has an incredible background as a director of photography and as a producer. We're going to get into all that and more. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a treat to have the Emmy Award nominee Tom Langan on the show.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So, let's start with the cool Zoom setup, right?
Okay.
Everybody is, I have a Yeti microphone, like $100 Yeti microphone and a pop filter. And people are like, oh, so your blue setup is so nice. I'm like, bro, it's not even in the ballpark of Tom Langan. So talk to me about your setup. How does it work? Should everyone do it?
Sure. I think everybody should pay attention to their setup. We'll start with that, right? We'll sort of couch it in those terms. And I think the reason that everybody should pay attention to their setup is the same reason that you make sure that your clothes are ironed and you look presentable before you walk into a meeting, right? The vast majority of the time we're on Zoom, we're in meetings, right? We're professional. We're representing ourselves, our brands, right? Now, neither one of us are like suit and tie type guys, right? We don't work in suit and tie businesses. We own our own businesses, right? So we don't feel obligated to like adhere to that. But like I'm put together, right? Like I'm wearing a clean shirt, right? Like I made sure that my beard wasn't like all crazy and all over the place. I have my branding on with my hat and everything. Like I pay attention to how I show up on every Zoom call, and I think everybody should. So we'll just start with that, right? Now, in terms of the setup that I have, mine is extreme, and I will fully own that. I own a media production company. I owned all of this equipment that I'm using for my setup before the pandemic happened. And so when the pandemic kicked off and everything went virtual, I just took my equipment that I had sitting around on shelves and put it to use, turning my office into a studio. And because of my background, I had the know-how to do that, right, effectively. So I have like 7 lights set up in my office. I have, between the camera and the lens, about a $3,000 camera set up. I have a teleprompter in front of the camera, as you were talking about, that has your image on it so that I can look at you while we're talking, rather than kind of having to look off. And I have, a several $100 microphone that I use for, that I typically use for like voiceover recording and things like that. When I do voiceover recording for clients, I also use it for recording my podcast. So I had all this equipment and I put it to use, creating, this setup. And then people said, hey, what do I do? How do I start looking like you? How do I look more like you? How do I show up on Zoom the way you do? And so I created a product called Gravitate. So it's GRAVIT, the number 8, Gravitate. And the whole idea behind Gravitate was to help people sort of achieve something like this. So it's hardware and guided setup to be able to do that. So it's camera, lighting, sound, and then guided setup with me or somebody on my team to help you install and use all of the components to the best of your ability.
Yeah. For those of you that think you can just YouTube your way through it, it is so much harder than I thought it was. I bought a couple things. It didn't work. It is really challenging to troubleshoot your way through this stuff. And Tom obviously has a million years of experience doing this sort of thing. And so there's a lot of value there. And then, I think the argument of how you show up on a Zoom call, if you're like me, you're constantly in these networking meetings. I mean, my life is literally like one networking meme after another. Like that's all I do anymore. Okay. Like, I don't know if I'm depressed. I don't know if this is like a therapy session now for my feelings about my Zoom meetings and, but man, that's a lot of time. And so if you're in sales in 2021, how are you not in a zillion Zoom meetings, right? And so how you appear obviously is a pretty big deal. So take Tom up on that offer. Let's chat about your history, but also your business. So you've got this sort of, hey, I will help you set up your Zoom calls so that you look stunning. It's Skype, it's everything, right? You're video conferencing. How much of your business is that? And what are the other things you do?
I mean, that's a small part of my business. Honestly, I would be happy for it to be more. And at the end of the day, I think that it's an ongoing need that I'm here to serve. So as more people refuse, right? There's this whole great resignation going on right now because people are turning around to their companies and saying, "Hey, you know what? We've been remote for 18 months." Or whatever it is, I think we're 20 months now, but we've been remote for 20, 21 months. Our productivity has actually gone up. And now you're turning around and going, hey, you have to come back to an office. And so people are going, I don't think so, buddy. I'm out. And they're resigning, right? And they're looking for remote work solutions and remote positions elsewhere. I think we're going to continue to see growth in this hybrid environment where there is some in person, because sometimes, let's be honest, that is advantageous to doing business. But more often than not, we're working remote. And so, for people who have public facing positions, our company leadership, our sales professionals, our public speakers who are now appearing virtually, all of those kind of people, it's really important that they show up looking their best on Zoom.
That sounds like a good sort of angle from a business partnership standpoint, is getting in with these public speaking companies and offering them a package, because they could just send an email, and be like, hey, do you want to step up your Zoom quality? The other thing too is it's so niche. I mean, I don't know how many people are doing this work. I can't imagine a lot.
I mean, not many. There are definitely some products on the market, but I think a lot of it has been done sort of through like affiliate marketing. So people have said like, oh, I've got a following, I've got an audience, like I've got a decent Zoom setup because, by virtue of that, or like I've created one because of that. And so I'm going to just like share affiliate links for the stuff that I use.
Oh, yep. That makes sense. Yep.
You know what I mean? But I think the problem with that is that, or the problem that I see with it from my position is twofold, really. Like, one, their setup might be specifically designed to work with the platform that they use, right? So when I put together Gravitate, I specifically went out to design a platform that works, hardware that works with any software platform. So any of the major video conferencing software platforms, whether you're using Zoom or WebEx or GoToMeeting or Google Meet, or, we're on Restream right now to do this live broadcast.
Listen, hey everyone, swing by Send It Rising live broad crap.
but yeah, so like we're on Restream right now too, right? And my system works with Restream, right? So it works across all the software platforms. It's been tested, and I know that it works. So that's the big thing, is this isn't just an affiliate. Could somebody go out and buy all of the individual components that make up a Gravitate system? Absolutely. Would they know what to do with them? Nope.
I mean, I was at a Verizon the other day, and thank you, Brad Hess, for writing broad crap in the comments. If you want to join us live, Send It Rising live, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, youtube.com/Send It Rising. So I was at a Verizon, and this poor lady, I felt so bad for her. I walk in and I'm like, oh, this is way busier than I thought it was gonna be. And she walks up to this guy and she's like, hi, sir, how can I help you? Like, way too customer service happy, because she deals with these people who are just furious all the time. That's just how she meets them, And anyway, he's like, yeah, I can't get on my phone, my passwords, whatever. She's like, well, you do have to schedule an appointment like 2 years in advance. It's one of these situations like, we are not helping you today. Like, get in line. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm not going to get my needs met today. And I overhear her conversation. She gives me that same sort of, hi, how can I help you, sir? After the other guy leaves. And I'm like, look, I get it. I'm just trying to buy a new phone. And she's like, look, for your generation, just do the Samsung Switch. Just get through the app. You can do it all from home. Just buy it online, do it, get the app. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I leave. I'm good, right? And I figured it all out myself, right? So there is a portion of the population that can just YouTube their way through this. Like, they're in it. It's cool. I'm 37 and I'm not. I mean, it's not working. Like, I already tried, right? A little bit here and there, like, to try to get the camera, because the issue is it's specific to like my system. It's a Mac, right? So I'm dealing with a Mac, and now there are plugins, and my Lumix camera is meant for XYZ, and it's a certain kind of Lumix camera, and this, like, you start going down the rabbit hole, and you're Googling and YouTubing more and more specific things, and the answers aren't there. And you just kind of go, you know what? This ain't worth it. So, I mean, I think that your demographic's a lot larger than just like 50 plus.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think too, like at the, on the other side of that too, is even for folks who theoretically, right, who are technically savvy enough, right, who are in their 30s, who could feasibly YouTube it, right? Because they've done that tons of times throughout their life for other things. At the end of the day, the question also is, do you have time and do you have the energy to do it, right? Or do you have more important things to do than to try to figure out how to put together a bunch of camera equipment that may or may not make you look better on Zoom? Because even if you buy the right equipment, then like, how do you know how to set up lighting? That's a whole separate YouTube education you have to get for yourself, right? So like, it's it's a multivariate problem, and I think a lot of people, it's been oversimplified by a lot of people, and it's like one of the reasons why everybody and their mother has a ring light now.
What do you mean?
Yeah. And like to the point where ring lights have even become part of a TikTok trend.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So like everybody and their mother has a ring light. You're actually using yours in a better way than most people do. But ring lights aren't really the best solution for lighting yourself for camera like this. Right? So like, there are tons of better solutions. There are specific, they just happen to be cheap. That's what it is like,
100%.
They got cheap because of like product photography and people doing product review videos and makeup tutorials and stuff on YouTube. So a bunch of manufacturers started making really cheap versions of them.
Yep.
And then everybody was like, oh, $30, ring light, done.
Yep.
Like, no problem. No,
it holds my phone.
That's why it holds your phone, because the whole idea behind a ring light is it's supposed to cast very even light around your whole face, right? Which is why they're really good for makeup tutorials. Think about like, where in other places in your life have you seen a ring light? A makeup mirror, right? You ever seen a round makeup mirror with a light all the way around it? Right?
Right. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My sister, Chelsea Smith Cosmetics, she's got a massive ring light, because that's what she does. She's a social media influencer.
Yeah. So it makes sense for that, right? But for the average person, it doesn't make sense. And I don't have a ring light in here. Like my Gravitate system does come with a ring light. We don't use it for a key or a fill light. It gets used for as what we would call a hair light or a backlight. It would be this light here. You can see like me casting the shadow on my face and blocking that light. So it would be that light that puts a little highlight on my shoulder here, this little warm highlight you see that helps separate me from my background. That's what I use the ring light for with my Gravitate setup. It just happens to come with one of the other pieces of equipment. So I wasn't going to throw it away, but I also wasn't going to use it for a key light, because that's not what it's for.
Right. Oh, totally. I mean, what we're talking about here is that you're basically the Bob Ross of Zoom. You know what I mean? You're just like, oh, this lighting's just a happy little accident. And as you can see here on this side of my face, this little splash of color.
Right.
And I mean, when I want to wax,
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. When I want to wax poetic about what I do as a director of photography, and as a cinematographer, that's what I do is I paint with light.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I painted with paint for my girlfriend's for Christmas present, and I'm not a painter, but I'm telling you, man, very cathartic. Getting
Yeah.
like a big old canvas, and getting in there and mixing that paint around and opening the window because it smells like paint, and then I use my left hand, so I'll brush with my left hand when my right hand gets a little tired. And then you know what I did? I wrote her a song and I put little secret love messages in the painting. You have to get up
Nice.
nice and close. So I feel like I'm earning points by doing that. Anthony, if you're listening
Nice.
to this, forget everything that I just said. That's hilarious.
You don't know anything. You'll be
You didn't hear that.
surprised, and
Dude,
you'll like it.
no, I mean, no, I think she will like it.
Yeah.
But
Just act surprised. That's
just
all.
act surprised. Yeah, this is fine. Everything's fine. But yeah, I mean, painting. It's so funny to me that the internet it's three things. It's words, uh, images, and sound. The images can go fast, and you can call that video, but that's it. That's all the internet
Mhm.
is. So like it's like all these social media companies that come out and take off. It's all culture. It's all culture, and so it's the painters, right? It's the painters, not. I mean, TikTok, yeah, cool, but YouTube came out with YouTube Shorts, which is TikTok. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the same technology, same thing, scrolling, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Um,
Reels on
yeah,
Instagram, same thing.
same crap, So it's just like, yo, it's the painters that make it. And so do not forget, listeners, that any moment you spend on a social media platform, you're working for them, man. You are working for them. Like if you are creating content on TikTok, you're an employee of TikTok. Not formally, but you are. I call it getting Zuckerberged. Like when people spend all their time on Facebook and they're like, or they hate Facebook, they spend all their time on it anyway. I'm like, you're literally showing up to like the coal mines of social media and like
Right.
spending time. All content that you produce on social, like, do you know how much money I spend on content? So much money, right? And these people just show up to these platforms and produce it for free. For free. Come on, people. So anyway, you're a painter. Remember that, and you are loved.
Yeah. I mean, it's Facebook started it really, like, Zuckerberg kind of pioneered it, but I mean, it's the
Mm-hmm.
commoditization of the consumer, right?
Mm-hmm.
um we are the product. The users are the product, and the data, our behavior, and the data that sort of represents that behavior is the product, is what he sells, right? So like he
Mm,
just mines the data, and that's what he sells to advertisers, and that's what's made him incredibly rich.
mm-hmm.
It's just taking that data and harvesting it and selling it off.
I saw something fascinating where some dude said if you got a job at 22 and you made $1 million an hour, and you worked for 40 years, that you would have a third as much money as Elon Musk. At $1 million an hour or something crazy. I was like, how does that make any sense? Doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. I mean, the other thing too is that, like, his overall, like, net worth, like, people like to talk about these net worths because they're like
Right.
these crazy inflated numbers, but that's also based on like current stock price. That's not real money. That's like
Right.
estimated net worth. Like if he, but the flip side is if he tried to start selling all of his stock, he would tank the stock price
Right.
before he was able to sell it all.
Right.
Right. And so he would end up being worth a fraction of what he's actually, like, of what they say he's worth now.
Right. And all the taxes that you would spend on that stuff and X, Y,
Yeah.
and Z.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's true.
the benefit that it gives him, and this is like, this was sort of revealed to me recently. This is sort of one of those dirty little secrets of like the super rich,
Mm.
is that they don't actually take much in salary, a lot of them, right? Like a lot of people who are like,
Mhm.
like Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, like those kind of level of wealth guys, like the wealthiest people in the world, multi billionaires, they don't actually take a lot in salary, right? Because that increases their tax liability. So a
Mhm.
lot of what they do is they borrow against the value of the stock that they hold in their companies, right? And other
Wow.
assets. And then they live off of that borrowed money, basically,
Whoa.
which means that they can take, like, on a daily basis, they can take a very low, and they can invest that money too, right? So like a
Mm.
lot of times they'll borrow a huge chunk of change and then they will invest that money in a way that it generates enough income that it basically pays for itself, but they don't end up having any tax liability because the income is going right back into the loan. And so they like essentially the loan interest that they're able to write off cancels out a lot of what they're making in income, and their tax liability becomes very, very low as a result.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's so wild that I
Yeah.
don't understand it. I
I
mean,
don't,
maybe
I barely
conceptually,
understand it.
maybe conceptually.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course. I mean, it's funny to me, and it's easy to look at these billionaires and go, "You evil," and then insert expletives. But it's like, don't we all do that when we go to the tax person? Aren't we all like, "How do I not pay a bunch and pay
Yeah.
less?" It's a very human sort of thing. And then as you get older, like I have multiple companies and there's write-offs. You know how it goes. It's just I don't know. People are trying not to pay the tax, dude. But I am no tax expert, so I can't even go
Yeah.
into that
No,
terrain without sounding like an idiot.
me neither. That's like the explanation I gave was probably like I was probably wrong in about 7 different ways, but that was my understanding of it as it was explained to me. But yeah, they figure out how to sort of minimize that liability, and so they basically live off of borrowed money, rather than taking income out of their business and having sort of like a general tax liability, income liability, right? And it's like the carried interest loophole is another way that they get around it and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. I think the not wanting to pay the tax man is very much an American thing. Like I know I have friends, overseas that pay, proportionally much higher taxes than we do. They also get a lot of social services that we don't get. And it doesn't really bother them at all. So, it's a matter of perspective. And I think a matter of what you're used to, right? We're raised to sort of like look for ways to pay the least amount of taxes you possibly can, right? It's sort of built into, it's a
Yeah,
cultural thing in the US.
yeah.
Um, but
Boston
I think we
Boston Tea
make
Party, right? I mean, I don't know. It really is. It is culturally relevant, and so is entrepreneurship. I was talking to um, a woman who was born in Taiwan in her 60s the other day, and and in the hierarchy of status, teachers are at the top, right? This is China, right? China, Taiwan. She's like they worship you like as a teacher. Like you still don't make a ton of money, but you are respected because you are the
yeah,
carrier of knowledge. That is the opposite in the United States. Teachers are like slave drivers, and they take away our independence, and and then at the bottom rung is salespeople, right? Because they're like the worst, right? It's like they're selling me all the time. It's like business people are like, right, gross, the outcasts. And it is the opposite, I think, in the United States. At the top is like we worship entrepreneurs. We just think that that's the greatest thing ever. And we were talking backstage. I've had run-ins with a number of very successful corporate people who are way wealthier than I am by orders of magnitude because they got stock in their companies and that sort of thing. And yet there is this sort of seed in the minds of so many people I meet that they just want to be their own boss. They just want to be an entrepreneur. Like that's the American dream to them. And so, yeah, we are, what's the word? Products of our environment.
yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, I grew up, in a household that was, um, sort of evenly split, so to speak, like in terms of entrepreneurship versus like sort of like standard career path in some ways. So my mom's a retired teacher, and she taught, for over 40 years. And my father's an attorney, but he's in private practice, his own practice, and has been for my whole life. And still is practicing now. He's been in practice for, I don't know, 50 years or something at this point. But he, it was him and one partner, and that was it. Right. So like they had to keep the lights on, they had to run the business. They were entrepreneurs just, as attorneys. Right.
Yep.
So it's interesting for me, like my past career in television in the entertainment industry, I was almost always an independent contractor. That's just sort of how that industry works. All of my work was like project based. And my mom never could wrap her head around the fact that I was on a project. I was going to be on that project for like maybe 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year, whatever the case may be. And then when that was done, I was out looking for another job, and she just could never wrap her head around it. Couldn't fathom like not knowing that I have a job every day, like no matter what, as long as I'm showing up and doing the work, like I'll keep getting the paycheck no matter what. Projects would end and I'd have to go look for another job. And I did it for like 17 years. I mean, I got very used to it. I was very comfortable with it. My mom, like, I think she was more nervous for me than I ever was. I always found more work, right? Because I had a good reputation. I was good at what I did in that industry. And I never went more than like, maybe a month between jobs in that whole 17 years. But like, you know, it was just a regular thing for me. Like it
Hmm.
never, so for me, like that entrepreneurship, I think that was sort of baked in. Like I learned it from my dad, and then I was an independent contractor for most of my career. And then for me to now hang out my shingle over the last couple of years and start Talix Media, to serve the business community, um, was just a very sort of natural progression for me. It made a lot of sense, but I'm comfortable with the uncertainty of it, right? And entrepreneurship definitely has a lot of uncertainty and a lot of risk.
Yeah, and I think, if you're not already, you may already be wildly successful, but those are the ingredients for that, for sure, because stability is expensive. It's very expensive. When you look at the paychecks for stability, it's rough, as compared to people that are willing to take that risk. Because nobody, I mean, I shouldn't say nobody, most people don't want to do that. They're not interested. They're just like, you know what? And then you get on the other side of it and you realize why stability is expensive, because the worry and fear that goes into dealing with instability has a cost. So if you're the employer and you're finding these jobs and it's inherently unstable, like that's what's so funny about the paycheck is it doesn't fluctuate unless you're in sales or commission based something, right? It's just the same thing, and people love that. They love when it's the same and predictable, and it
Right.
makes it feel like there's order in the universe. But as the business owner, that that's an illusion. Like I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea,
Yeah.
right? So I'll deal with that headspace of like, oh, like we'll see what happens tomorrow. And then you get your stability, but I get the benefit of dealing with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. Right. Because as the business owner, it's sort of like, well, we got to like sign a couple of new clients or else, I'm not going to be able to afford to keep all these people on payroll. Right. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not going to have the work and I'm not going to have the income to be able, the business isn't going to have the income to be able to support, this workforce. Right. And that's something that you have to worry about or think about as the owner of a business that, as an employee, you're just showing up to do your job, right? And all of those big worries about whether or not the business is going to be around, in 6 months is somebody else's problem to figure out.
Yep.
Um, but I agree with you. I'd rather sort of deal with all of that and have the opportunity to sort of forge my own path, which is really how I look at it. Um, you know, doing it this way means that I can decide who the clients are that I want to work with, and how I can steer them towards creating better communications with their audience. I had a client meeting just before this with an existing client. We're now doing a second round of work with them.
Hmm.
And, they very much said, "You're the expert. What do you think we should do here?"
Oh yeah.
And like, that's my favorite kind of client to work with, right? Because
Yep.
that means that we have trust,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? That I trust them, to do what they do and to do it well and to supply me with what I need to be able to do my job well. And they trust me to guide the process and to deliver a good end result for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's like, I think that's the dream, is building a client, a rapport with your clients that's, just built on trust and being able to move forward together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a beach house in San Diego. People of the world, youtube.com/Sender Rising. If you want to join us, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Monday through Friday. You can chat right there if you like. If you're like most folks and you're listening after the fact, either on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube, or the many other places that this show is, we love you and we genuinely appreciate you listening to this. Tom, I want to make sure that you get a chance to tell the fine folks where they should reach out to you, how they can do that, etc.
Sure, absolutely. So you can find me on social media if you just search at Talex Media LLC. So that's at TALEX MEDIA LLC. That's my social media handle. That's across all the social media channels. And on any of those, you can find links to my website, which is very simple. It's just talexmedia.com, TALEXMEDIA.com. So super simple there. Try to keep it easy and consistent, right? And then if folks want to, I have a new process that I've developed called legendeering, which I believe is the future of how businesses will communicate with their audiences, grow their audiences, and grow their revenues, turning fans into customers. And so I've created this process, and I'm teaching a free masterclass on it on December 15th. So 1 week from tomorrow. It's going to be at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the link to register is masterclass.talexmedia.com.
All right. I was just about to add that to my calendar. Take the class, people. Whenever people offer free classes like this, especially small business owners, it's not like you're getting stuck in a legal shield pitch fest for an hour. You know what I mean? Like, I've been in those meetings and they're just so painful. So here's one thing I'll say about Zoom before we call it a day on the show. You can just leave. Isn't that wonderful? If you're stuck in one of those sales pitch things, there's all that social awkwardness. But in a Zoom meeting, man, you just click out and just go take a shower. Anyway.
Yeah. And I would say this too, just so you know, and just to clarify for everybody listening, there is no sales pitch included in that masterclass. The only invitation I will offer in that class is to invite you to sign up for a free call with me. That's it. And you don't have to just by coming to the class. I'm just going to offer it as an option. Right. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, small business owners, it's just totally different. Like, these large corporations, they're big into these, like, get you stuck in a room and pitch you for an hour nonsense. But small business owners are usually much better than that, where they show up, they actually provide value because they get it. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, special thanks to Tom for swinging by the show today. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you doing that. And we'll see y'all next time. Bye, guys.
Thanks.